Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us at the Inclusion Initiative for another awesome conversation in our Inclusion Conversation series. And today I'm really excited about our two guest speakers, Michael and Tony. But before we get started, just want to remind you that this is a live stream. We're also streaming on our YouTube channel at the Inclusion Initiative LLC. So check us out there too. And this is a conversation between lived experience people where we're going to be talking about allyship in the child welfare system. And we're going to meet two really amazing people that have really been a great example of that and have both gone on to build some pretty great organizations and author a couple books, no big deal. So we're really excited to share all that with you. And just a reminder again that this is a inclusive, welcoming, respectful space. And we want to encourage you to participate with us. So like or react during the conversation. You can pose questions in the comments and let us know if there's something that you want to hear from either of our guest speakers as we move along in the conversation. We really welcome your participation and your questions. So without further ado, would love to introduce you to one of my guest speakers. May look familiar to you. Tony and I had a conversation together here on LinkedIn Live last December, and it was just such a great, lovely conversation where we got to talk about his experience in congregate care and how he has really taken what he has experienced and the impact, right, of the child welfare system on his life and what he does now for youth that are currently in care, but also for the education system as a whole. So I'm really excited to welcome you back, Tony, and our other guest, Michael Arterberry, who is, let me see, got to get my notes here. He's the founder of Youth Voices Center, and he's the author of a new book that we'll talk about. Tony will also be talking about your new book too. So I'm really excited to have you both on. Thank you, and welcome. Tony, you want to share a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me back, Grace. It's a great opportunity. I'm glad this is the first time Mike and I have been on a call together. A little bit about me, for those of you who weren't able to hear my last conversation with Grace. I entered the foster care system at the age of 8, had to navigate both the education and the foster care system simultaneously. Went through the system until I aged out and left for college, and I never looked back. I had an amazing journey in terms of being able to meet people along my way. One person who you're going to, I'm going to mention, I mentioned in my last story, is Mike, when we will share a little bit more about our connection. But, fast forward to, where I am today. I'm in the process of converting my for-profit Fostering Minds to a nonprofit, and being able to close that education gap. Currently, 97% of foster youth are not persisting to graduation. I used to talk about that stat from the 3%. Now I want to help get that 90%, 97% across the stage. And through some of the work that I'm doing, whether it's through speaking, whether it's through, doing workshops on helping the youth who are currently in the system or who are currently recently out of the system. I want to use all the knowledge that I have inside from my experience to help sort of move the needle.
Yeah, that's awesome. And don't be humble, Tony. You're also a PhD candidate. You're a PhD candidate, right?
I'm an EDD candidate. Yes,
Oh,
I'm in
EDD,
my.
yes.
I'm going. Yep. I'm a 1 year down, and I'm about to finish my second of 2 summer sessions coming up. And my research is geared towards helping foster youth.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Congratulations. So
Thank
proud
you.
of
Thank
you.
you.
So happy to have you in the sector and being a positive force for change. We really need you, Tony. So thank you for your dedication to this work. And Michael, a little bit about you.
A little bit about me. Well, that was very impressive, Tony. I can't wait to divulge our connection. But anyway, Yeah, my name is Michael Arterberry, and as far as the system, I started out as a caseworker, and my experience as a caseworker, what I loved about it was the variety of the different young people I had on my caseload. But what I did as a social worker, and I would sometimes get ridiculed, is I blurred that line between professionalism and them really being my family. And I really, took on the role of uncle, brother, whatever the case may be with the young people. But I started out as a caseworker, got promoted to the independent living counselor, where I then, started to help the young people with the transition from foster care to being independent. And it was a crucial position because you filled the gap, and a lot of responsibility, I would have to say, not on me that I didn't want, but a lot of responsibility to prepare these young people to be able to fend for themselves once they got out into the community. And from there I went on and I created my own curriculum. It's called Power of Peace. It's a curriculum that I take into middle schools and high schools. With the success of the curriculum, I was able to establish my own nonprofit, which is called Youth Voices Center. Um, Branching off that, I started to do some speaking, motivational speaking, and I have 2 books that I authored. So, the lived experience, I feel as if you don't keep it for yourself, you have to share it with other people. And so I just take my day-to-day experiences, everything that I've experienced in my life, and I try to pass that on to not only the young people that I interacted with through the system, but my daily interactions with people today.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks so much for being here, Michael. Really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I want to give our audience a chance to get to know about why you two are on this event and this conversation together. It would be really great to hear a little bit about what your experience was like being in community together within the child welfare system. Michael, you were a social worker. Tony, you were a foster youth in congregate care as an older child, and that is really complicated, and it's very it's a unique relationship and system to navigate. So would really love to hear from both of you what you would like us to know about your experience together.
Well,
Yeah, Mike, I'll start.
okay, go
You
ahead.
want me to start and
Yep.
share the make the connections?
Yeah.
Often when I give speeches and I talk about kids coming out of the foster care system, I always talk about there's that one person, right? And it only takes us that one person to believe, even when we don't believe in ourselves. And for me, Mike Alderberry, Mike was that person for me. I met Mike when I was 12. Being when he was the independent living coordinator, although I wasn't of age to work with him because I think the kids at that age had to be 16 before you start the process. But Mike and I had conversations, during that time until I was on that verge of transitioning out. And he always used to tell me, man, you were wise beyond your age. The questions I would ask. And like he said a few minutes ago, he definitely took on that big brother, the father role during different times and different points in my life, even into my adulthood. And I will tell you, he was the person who packed me up in my black garbage bags and he brought me to college. He brought me on my college visit, but he brought me in. And for those of you who are in foster care, you know about the infamous black bags I know that's starting to change, but I was in my black bag. I had 4 black bags. And, when we got to the area in the college, he took me shopping, he got me some food, and we moved me right into my dorm room multiple times.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for him, I don't, yes, I had to drive, but I needed someone to advocate for me, right? Because I knew I had potential, but having potential in the system that don't really see, foster youth as having potential, right? There's that scarcity mindset or the limited belief that we can't do or we can only do certain things. Mike's
Yeah,
been
and I'm
believing.
gonna interrupt you for a second, Tony,
Sure.
because I think a lot of people in the audience need just more understanding about the significance of this, right? You were in congregate care, which means it's essentially like a group home setting for
Yes.
youth who are not placed into foster homes and who are not adopted. And typically within congregate care, right, the age ranges are older youth. So
Yes.
kids that are what, maybe 10 into their teens. And they typically stay in these congregate care settings for a long time because they're not being placed into homes. And so with the black garbage bags that you were talking about, that was like a common visual, right? It was like the
Yes.
norm for all of you to
Hmm.
see. Like it wasn't it was just normal. And that's like so sad when we think about it now. It's just normal. And you didn't think twice about it, right? That was just life. And for you coming into spaces, especially, in a world that's not as familiar with the system, the foster care system, and what youth go through in the system and how they're almost dehumanized. Like, seriously, here's your black garbage bag. This is your value. You get a black garbage bag for your stuff. Like, this just puts into perspective how dehumanized you are when you come out of the system and into these spaces like higher ed, right? And so how significant it is for someone like Michael to um, help people see the humanity in foster youth, that you're not just a statistic, you're not just a number, you're not just this black bag, you're a person with potential
Hmm.
and real talent, and you need help and support just like everybody else. Anyone that has a family and comes into college, they still have their family helping them. And so it just brought that level of humanity, which I want to make sure to highlight for the audience. But anyway, I interrupted you.
Yes.
I'm really sorry about that, but I wanted to highlight that. So please go on.
Yes, so Mike was that person for me, and like I said, he remained in my life since I was 12. And here's, fast forward so many years later, he's been at my graduations from college. I graduated from college, and in different points on different milestones in my life. So I'm happy to be on this call with him. This is the first time we share in this space, talking about having this conversation. So I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I don't believe in coincidence. I think it was supposed to happen, and this is the right time that it's happening. So I'm excited to be on the call with him and you, Grace, as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So Michael, share a bit about your perspective in helping Tony navigate through this journey.
Well, let me start with the bags. Listen, let me tell you something. You're talking about a social worker that drove crazy. It really, really disturbed me. Now that I'm older and I got, a little bit more money in my pocket and I'm a little bit smarter, I may have been, a little bit more forward and got him a duffel bag or something. But yes, the bags, when you mention the bags, it's something that stays with me. But what I created for Tone and all the young people that I've interacted with when I was working in the foster care system, is my mom. I grew up in a dysfunctional family. My dad was an alcoholic. My house was crazy, but my mom was consistency. And she loved me in a way that love prevented that horrible stuff going on in my house to touch me. What I did for Tony is I was that is consistent. He knew that he could depend on me if he asked me for something. If I said I was going to do something, I made sure I followed through, and kept him accountable. So it was if you told me something, don't just tell me something. The next time we speak, let me know if you followed through. And the genuine care, he knew that the love was genuine. And so working in the system, they have to learn to understand that with the different staff workers. You have to learn that, Jimmy's coming into work tonight. I don't like Jimmy. He don't really like kids. So I'm going to make sure I walk on eggshells tonight. But when Suzanne comes in the morning, I like her and she's more loving. And so, what I did is, I think what I genuinely loved about my mom is that I always knew the woman that I was going to see when I saw her. So in the midst of the dysfunction, I didn't have to add that to the craziness. And that's what I tried to do for Tone, is anytime he saw me, he knew what he was going to get, and delivered, and I saw the potential that he had. And, Tone and I figured out for the foster care youth, I was never told that their room and board would be paid for college if they went off to college. And he was part of a big group of kids in the system that we jumped on that and we went after it. And like he says, I remember it, Tone. I remember packing up in that green van, and Tony likes to fish. So fishing is one of his hobbies. Every body of water we pass from the Bronx to Lake Placid, he says, one day I'm going to fish there. I'm going to fish there. But I took him up there. It was like 7 hours, man. Whew. But it was tremendous. And when he says we've been friends since, he how old are you now, Tony, if you don't mind me saying?
46.
Yeah, 46, 12 years old. That's a deep, rich friendship that we have.
That's over 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's really cool.
Oh, it just gave me chills. Stop.
So, Michael, what would you say was a key moment for you? You were a social worker. And remind me how long you did that work for?
I did it for 11 years.
11 years. So,
yes.
And were you newer or more of a veteran when you were interacting with Tony?
I was a veteran. Yep, I had been there. Yep, I had been there.
You had been there for a while. You had seen a lot. And so tell me a key moment for you as a social worker within the system, supporting kids, but also, confined by the structure and, internal politics, external politics, and just the rules within, the system for caseworkers. There's not a lot of bandwidth or flexibility, to support individual youth in the ways that they need to be supported. It's just hard with the kinds of resources that you have and all of that. And so I'm sure it was really challenging for you to know, how best you could support Tony when you had I'm sure, a caseload like this high. But also there were restrictions and limitations on the support you could provide, what you could say, all of these things, But somehow you two were able to build a trusting relationship, which I think is it can be less common, especially in congregate care. And so just talk a little bit about, I guess, a key moment for you as a social worker in terms of how you, when you saw a moment, an event, where you knew, you can make a difference despite the limitations.
Yeah. So Tone was in a group home and I would come to the group homes and do workshops with the young people. I was given like a curriculum that I was supposed to deliver. And remember when I said I blurred the lines, I didn't use the curriculum. I used life experience. And I spoke to these young men, like they were my own, like they were, I was at that age, more or less their brothers, not their fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And, the loophole in that changing moment for me was that educational piece. When I found out the support that the system was obligated, see, they didn't tell me this, if the young person decided to go to college, there was some guaranteed support that they would get. And once I got that information, Grace, I ran with it. Not just Tony, but anyone that was eligible. I mean, I was getting these kids, you know, placement exams. We were going off to school. I didn't care if they weren't totally ready, if they could get out of Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx for a semester. I wanted them to be able to see something else. And so that was the changing moment when I saw that if they went off to college, they had the financial support. I knew that I could provide the support as far as someone to support them from a family type perspective. And then young people like Tone helped me, because I'll never forget, he won't remember, but when he made the honor roll, he made the honor roll, he brought back the paper clippings. And so you meet a young man like Tone who has the fire, when he says, he had the desire, but being in the system, you have bumps in the road. So every so often he would have a bump, but because we had that trust and relationship, he'll tell you, we don't have to get into detail, but we had some real rough times where, we had to sit down, like that was father son, I had to sit him down and be like, all right, dude. All right, now we have to really look at it from this perspective. Let's shake that off and let's move forward. So if you ask me what really gave me the ammunition to really push the issue, was when I found out that the system was obligated to support these young people if they decided to go to college.
So it was really a key moment for you where you were like, okay, like this makes sense to me, right? And I am going all in to be the best ally I can for these youth to get their opportunity realized to enter into higher education if they want it, right?
Yes.
And I think in our society, it's really important to highlight getting a 4-year degree it doesn't define who you are. And it's not necessary, right, to build a career in life that you want. And it shouldn't be. But the reality is, when you are a foster youth and you're a person of color, it is a big deal. It makes a huge difference in how you're perceived in the world and the opportunities you get. Because you're a person of color that's coming out of the foster care system, especially if you're a person that's aging out and did not get placed and adopted into a family. That's a huge deal. And so we can't minimize that, even though, right, we know logically, and we're seeing the trend unfold, right, that 4-year degrees are no longer necessary to get salaries in the 6 figures and get these amazing career opportunities, right? And that's good in society as a whole. But the reality is, people in the system that have experienced what it's like in the child welfare system, this doesn't necessarily hold true. And so the importance of helping these young people obtain higher education goals, such as a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree or vocational training, things that are going to help them level up and get out of this cycle of this, what the child welfare system puts them in. This is really, really important. So I'm really happy to hear you say that and that you recognize that. And I wish it could be different. Like, I wish, like, we didn't have to feel like we had to push ourselves into these, heights of achievement. But the fact is we do.
Yeah.
And so, especially Black youth that are in the system, it is like quadruply hard for Black youth. And so turning that question to you, Tony, I would love to hear from you what a key moment was, either just in congregate care or with your relationship with Michael, where you started to form an allyship. And I think this is so important. That word is really important for us to talk about today, because that's really what you were becoming, Michael. You were an ally to Tony as a youth, Tony, you were also an ally to Michael within the system, right? Because you were building trust in a relationship with him. Like you were showing the system as a whole that it was possible. It was
Yes.
possible to have these good, positive relationships that actually move the needle, right?
Hmm.
And so just talk about that, a key moment for you.
Yep. So I want to take a step back. I remember having this conversation, Mike. You may have remembered this. It was the one of the supervisors who oversaw the group homes. Her name was I don't want to say her name, but she oversaw the supervisors. And there was a point in high school where I tell my story. I was reading and writing at the 8th grade level, going to my senior year, and I wanted to quit. I had all these exams I had to take. And I remember having a conversation. She had just come over for a meeting, and I walked into her car, and I was like, "Listen, I'm ready to quit high school. I'm ready to go for a GED." And she was this Hispanic woman. She was strong, and she said, "Mira, you go back inside. You know exactly what I'm talking about." She said, "Mira, you go back inside. Don't be coming at me with that GED stuff. You're gonna finish it, and you got a few more weeks left. I don't want to hear anything. I will see you at your graduation. I will see you at your graduation." And I would never forget that, because she's always been someone that gave me tough love. And I went back out as much as I didn't want to hear it. She was right. And it's nothing wrong with the GED. But again, when I didn't believe I could make it in that moment, I needed to hear those tough words, because it was rough. But if you reframe that, she was basically saying, "You have what it takes. Like, don't stop here. It's hard, but you got what it takes." And sure enough, I was able to pass those exams and graduate. Even though it a year after my graduating class, I graduated. I walked across that stage, and I got a high school diploma. Um, Going through the process, that key moment is, I applied to 2 schools. I applied to New York City Technical College in Brooklyn, and Paul Smith College. And Paul Smith College, they have this college access program called Higher Educational Opportunity Program. I applied. I went for a visit in the spring of '97, and I fell in love with a frozen lake. Is that not? I fell in love with a frozen lake, but that I knew if I got into that program, I would never let a rock go unturned. And sure enough, when I got into that program in the summer, and the great thing about that program, it was a 4-week summer program that I had to attend before I started my first full semester. And the point of that program was to build up my skills. Again, I was going into my senior year, reading and writing at the 8th grade level, but I was so committed to increasing my writing ability, so that way I can be successful. Um, again, that program, I credit it because it saved my life. The staff, and the commitment, and the counselors that was there to support me um, through the struggles, because here I am going from the city all the way up to a rural area in upstate New York. I mean, this is probably about 2 hours away from Canada. And my motto has always been, I went from the bricks to the sticks, because that's exactly what happened. I was in the middle of nowhere. And at the time, I was one of 5 diverse people on campus. Right? It's very few. I think I might have been the only Spanish kid on campus. But that was tough. But one thing I knew from being in a group home, I've been around kids from all different walks of life and all different, races. So I was familiar, and I was one of those people that can build relationships really quickly because of my personality, and I used that to benefit, throughout my entire life. But yeah, those was the key moments that sort of shaped me in believing that I can make it in this world. I just gotta get out of the 5 boroughs. In my case, it was Westchester, New York.
Yeah, your experience is really enlightening to, right, just the the very common challenges and barriers that young people face. And I love the story that you told of the person who really pushed you and gave like no excuses, Tony.
Yep.
No excuses, because she believed in you and
Hmm.
she pushed you to believe in yourself, which is something that you know, we hope for all youth in the system, that they can see beyond their situation. They can see beyond, the feelings of inadequacy that they have because they're youth in a foster system. They don't feel cared about. They don't feel visible. They don't feel like they have futures. And that's really special what she did for you. And I'd love to hear a little bit more too about how, the experience with Michael, right? Coming in, doing the workshops, being real with you, providing lived experience examples of things that he went through that were parallel or very similar or even the same, right, as things that you were going through and your peers in the congregate care were also going through. Like, what did that do for you, Tony? Like, how did that change your perspective or your ability to, grow a closer relationship with Michael?
I think once I figured out that Mike was definitely genuine and that there was no whenever we had a conversation, it was never one of those. I think Mike said this, or I think he meant this. Nah, he told it how it was, and being around the other kids in the group home, some of them weren't picking up what he was putting down, and I was hanging on to every single word because he spoke with conviction. He would share his story, and I was like, he's been through a struggle. He may not have my experience, but he's been through some struggle, and he was able to combat it. And I'm like, if anybody's gonna help me through this, it's gonna be Mike. And one thing I had back then that I still, I pride myself on having now is I had hope, right? And I had a lot of hope, even though I didn't know what was gonna happen next. And when you have a little bit of hope, and then you have somebody who also has that extra hope, but then you attach that to the experience, I mean, anything can happen, right? We didn't know what was going to transpire once I got to college, if I was going to stay, if the academics was going to be there. But we knew that if I had an issue, there was no question. I would call, back then I would I would call Mike from payphone. Hey, here's what's going on. Um, you know, it started off, week by, especially the summer program. Summer program was hard. It was one of the hardest things for me because I've never been away, but I was struggling at the college academically during that summer. And I remember getting on the payphone and just calling him and just saying, "Hey, this is what's going on. This is hard." And he can tell you, I wanted to leave. I wanted to get on that bus ride and get back home to the city. I wanted to get back to my comfort zone on being in
Yeah.
a group home. And he was like, "Nope. You can call me. You can call me any day, but you're not coming back down to the city." And so again, the tough love, but it was building that resilience. And I didn't know what that was, what the word was called back then, but that's exactly what I was doing. I was building the resilience, and building the capacity in myself and the confidence in myself to believe that I could do it. And from then on, I never had a bad semester. I never had a bad GPA. I never failed a semester. I may not have had the highest, but if you look at my track record or my GPA, you can see it went from high school all the way up to where I am. But it was just that belief, and I never, Mike definitely encouraged me to use my resources. And what I did was I used my resources at the college. Everywhere I went, I used my resources. I found out what was available to me, and I used them. And I used them for myself, and I used them if someone else was struggling who needed support. I would say, "Hey, you need to go here, right? They can do X, Y, and Z for you."
Yeah, that's really amazing, Tony. Thank you, thank you. And we have a few minutes left before we get into the Q&A portion.
Mm-hmm.
And I could talk a long time about the relationship that you two had, how you built really this foundation, right, for a lifelong friendship. And that doesn't happen to everybody. That's really uh, a mix of, luck in terms of you are you, Tony, and you are you, Michael, right? And it fostered an environment where you could really build a relationship together. But not everyone has that opportunity who is experiencing foster care or who is a social worker within the system. And it would be really great to share with the audience what you both are doing now, how this experience of being an allyship together, right, really impacted what you're able to build now and what you see for the future of foster youth, foster alumni, even adoptees, right? There are foster youth that get adopted, and how this correlates to what you're trying to do, which is improve futures, improve opportunities. And that's exactly what we do at the Inclusion Initiative, right? We're elevating the future of work for adoptees of color and foster alumni because we really see this gap of network and this opportunity gap in the workplace and in just the whole professional scope of our society. And so we're building this, right, to be a part of the solution and build a better future. So, Michael, I would love to hear a bit more about Youth Voices Center. You've also authored a new book, The Ripple Effect. Tell us a little bit about how your lived experience as a social worker, especially, ties into what you're doing now.
Yes, well, what I've been able to do is you took a street kid who went to college and got a social work degree, and I blended that street side with the social work piece. And I say that because my curriculum is something I put together, but it's real. It's a real experience. I go into high schools and middle schools, high schools for 2 full days, middle schools for one day, and I do an interactive experience where I allow the young people to take the opportunity to get to know who they are, and then also get to network and interact with students that they might not normally interact with in school. So I ask for a cross section of students for each one of my groups of 20 students. But what I really drive home, and it's consistent with what I did when I worked in the foster care system, is we have to use our story as a catalyst for success rather than for
Mm-hmm.
failure.
Yeah.
And what happens is when a young person is spiraling off of what went on in their lives and they're not able to make sense of it, everything is just craziness. But once you get them to identify that they were able to be successful to overcome certain sections of it, it's giving them a fresh perspective of what they lived through. And it's a changing moment. You see the light bulb go off when they realize, like, wait a second, all this time I thought I failed, but I'm now about to graduate high school, and my mom's a heroin addict. That's not supposed to happen. And
Yeah.
so, being able to take their story and use it as a catalyst for success is what I try to do with the young people, and what I tried to do as a social worker. My book, The Ripple Effect, when you think about what's going on today with me, you, and Tony, it's exactly what my book is about. I feel as if you live in your purpose, fear is paralyzing. So if you don't go after living in your purpose, there's someone waiting for you to accomplish your goal so that they can get theirs. So if you decide not to get out of the bed and attack it, somebody is going to be deprived from that. And so that responsibility is not only on you, it's on the person that you take it from. And so I believe that when you live in your purpose and you give back, and then the book, what it is a compilation of stories of young people and adults that I've met in my purpose, and our interaction was transferred from us interacting to them paying it forward. And so it's the ripple effect, and it just continues to go on and on and on. And that's what I feel like makes the world go on. People say pay it forward, but I just feel it's the ripple. You know what I mean? Tony met you. We thought about this subject, and now we're sitting on, an interview simply because of the ripple.
Yep, that's well said. I
Yeah.
really love it's really a full circle moment,
Yeah.
which is awesome, right? Because ripples are circles too. And so
Yeah.
you can think about it both ways. It's both wide, but also it's the full circle as well. And with your book, The Ripple Effect, like, can you share a little bit about, if, especially, a young person, a foster alum, maybe recently aged out of the system, gets a chance to read your book, what do you want them to get out of it? Like, what's the key message you want them to take away?
The key message is that life is not about the destination, it's about the journey. We so much are so targeted on where we want to go. We don't learn as we're going through the process, because the things that we're learning through the process is what's ultimately going to allow you to stay at your destination once you reach it. So what I want a young person to do is to read these stories and see that first and foremost, you're not alone. Which with my program, it happens where these young people realize that what I went through, other people have gone through similar things, but not only has someone gone through something that's similar than what I'm going through, but they made it. They made it. I open up my workshops, and Tone will tell you, is I grew up in poverty, Grace. I got a house that I show them with boards on it, no heat in the winter. I mean, I grew up with nothing.
Yeah.
And then I show them the raised ranch that I live in now. And so to show them that transition, I tell them I'm a crackpot, just like you. But I was able to use the things that I've gone through in my life to benefit me. So the book has stories that are rich with it. I got a young lady in that contributed, that grew up in a household where she was abused, she wasn't mothered correctly, but she now has a daughter. And she has the daughter, and she is the greatest mom. And so she was able to take our experience together, and she's now broken a cycle, and the ripple effect now goes on to a daughter, because a daughter doesn't have to grow up in the same environment that she did.
Yeah, that is a really great example, highlighting and showcasing what you mean by the ripple effect. Yes. So thank you so much for writing that book.
Thank you.
I hope people check it out. I just had it on screen, but it's available at michaelotterberry.com. And, one thing that you said that I kind of want to reframe a little bit, and I would encourage you to think about reframing it in this way, right? Using our lived experience, right, to create a better future for ourselves or for the world. What I like to say is that we are empowered by our lived experience, and we're going to empower others through our lived experience and the impact that we want to make through it. Because I think when we say it in different ways, people get the wrong idea. When it's really about us empowering ourselves and then empowering each other, right? There's no way to misconstrue that empowerment. And so that also aligns with, right, the ripple effect that you're talking about. We empower ourselves, which grows into empowerment for others. And it's really important that we take care of ourselves, that we recognize that we need to be whole and we need to be on a healing journey and our own empowerment journey so that we can have the maximum impact on others. And so it's something that I've seen you, Tony, do really in amazing ways, right? Through Fostering Minds. You've authored books yourself, a couple of children's books in particular. Your most recent, Gust of Grateful Groundhog, is just, it looks amazing. And I am seeing that it's resonating with a lot of young people because you are empowering them through this storytelling, through your lived experience as well. So why don't you share a little bit about Fostering Minds and your new book as well?
Yeah, so Fostering Minds, like I said, I'm going to be converting it into a nonprofit. It's located here in the capital region of New York. I go into foster care agencies and I do presentations with them. I work with the staff. I work with the youth. And my goal is to really close that education gap, right? Part of my doctoral work is to find out what are the factors that the 97% that are not graduating, what's preventing them from graduating, right? And try to work out a program to build for them to help them get across that stage. My new book, Gust the Grateful Groundhog, it's I talk about the importance of just gratitude, being kind, and just having a positive mindset. The book is near and dear to my heart. Mike mentioned I have the love for fishing. And on my fishing journeys, I ran into woodchucks, groundhogs, beavers. And the book story takes place in New York City in Central Park. And he just travels around. He wakes up grumpy one day and he just travels around New York City. Once he realized that, he always has something to be grateful for. So he goes around New York City thinking, the construction workers and what he noticed that when he was doing that, he was creating a ripple effect. No pun intended, Mike, but he was creating a ripple effect. And what he noticed is that people started being kinder and started sharing with one another in the story. And he goes on to to continue that journey of just sharing positivity and just being grateful. And, it's important to be in that sort of grateful mindset because when you're having a bad day and you do something kind for someone else, right? The psychology behind it is that it gets your mind off of what's happening in your life. Right. And, I'm always ready to serve and sort of put myself in other people's shoes and be able to meet them where they are. So gratitude is near and dear to my heart. I'm grateful for all the people that I've met along my journey and every little moment in my life, including this one we're sitting on this call. When I sit back tonight and reflect on this call, I'm grateful for this because I understand that there's no such thing as coincidences. This is what's meant to happen. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be on this call with the two of you.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you on the call with us, Tony. I mean, you have connected, us together in this conversation. And it's really important, right? Because what we're doing, back to Michael's book, is creating this ripple effect of elevating each other and also being supportive of each other and what we're trying to put out in the world. I just have to laugh for a second, Tony, because someone turned the lights off.
So I'm in the class. Yeah, I'm in the classroom, and
but
I haven't moved. I haven't moved.
It was like a signal or something. It's like, bam, Tony's like saying something like really profound. Bam, listen to it, because all of a sudden the room went really dark. But what you're saying is exactly right. We do not do this by ourselves.
Yep.
We need people. We need help and support along the way. Michael, you recognize that in all your years of social work, in all of your years running your organization and your consulting and writing these books. Same with you, Tony, right? You understand that people need you. You could go on and live the best life, not have a care in the world, really. You have a beautiful family. You have a beautiful home. You could just go and just really just hang back and lay back and just live a life that's not complicated, right? But what we're choosing to do is to intentionally complicate our life because we recognize the importance of supporting each other, supporting others,
Mhm.
and being a megaphone for these messages. Because none of us got to where we are without some kind of support, without people along the way. So I really appreciate the both of you having dedicated so much more time than I have to this point in doing work like this and advocating for communities, specifically the foster care community. It's really, 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 really important. And I can't thank you enough for doing that. And so I want to just repeat, right? michaelartaberry.com. The Ripple Effect book is available on his website. Please check it out. Please share with people that you think would need this message, that this message would resonate with them, because it's not only a book about internal motivation, but it's a book about hope. Really, really necessary in this world. Tony's book, Gus the Grateful Groundhog. Please visit him at fosteringminds.co where you can learn more and hire both of these gentlemen to come into your organizations and really be a shining light in their own ways, right? Through their own messages, and help us create some better futures for especially people with lived experience in foster care. And now I want to go into the Q&A portion a little bit. We've got one question from an audience member asking, I recently aged out of care. Where do I begin to create a better future for myself? So what's some advice that you can give? Either of you.
Do you want to start, Mike?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead, son. You go.
I would say the first thing is you got to surround yourself with some people who who's currently supporting you right now, and you want to lean on them. It's no time to be bashful, and it's no time to like Mike said, your story, right? You were in foster care, but that's not who you are, right? That's just a chapter of the book in your life right now. And how you start to rewrite that next chapter is you have to put yourself out there and start. I'm not saying go out and tell your story, but what I'm saying is you got to go out there and build your network of people that are and starting here, right? You can reach out to me. We can start here. We can get on a private Zoom call, and we could talk through some of where you are, because I want to find out where you are and how I can sort of connect. And when you start to get connected with groups like this, you're going to learn that the social capital that we rarely even talk about is that when we connect, my social capital then opens up, right? And what that means is that I may not be able to help you directly, but I have people in my social network that might be able to guide you, but having a conversation. But definitely email me, reach out to me, go to my website, let's get connected, and don't hesitate. And if you want to shoot me an email, I'll see it this afternoon. That's how serious I am, and we can get connected.
That's great, Tony. Thanks. Michael?
Oh, he nailed it. I mean, I really, really, they could, email me as well. One thing I would have to say though is we sometimes get bullied into doing certain things in our next chapter, and I say this to adults, not even just young people, is do what you love.
Yep.
Don't make it about money. Don't make it about influence. When you find a career path, you want to find something that when you wake up and you have to go, there's never a day where you say to yourself, oh, I can't believe that I have to go to that place. And so when you have the control of it now, because it's a new chapter, make sure what you're pursuing is something that you want and not what you think the world would think is something that fits you.
Yeah, that's really sound advice. Thank you, Michael, so much. Another quick question. What do you two feel like is the future of work for people with lived experience in foster care? What do you see as the potential?
Go ahead, Tony.
I think, yeah, I definitely think that the more conversations we have that, centered around that lived experience and, talk about, especially from your lens, Grace, where you talk about not having the opportunities like most, people who are not foster youth coming out of the system when it comes to, the workforce and the gaps and, where we are in the scale of opportunities. I think that's huge. I think had this been around when I was, fresh out of college and I had a network to sort of to connect with for people with lived experience, I think I would have been in a different position. Not that I would change anything. I think I would have been a little bit further ahead on an even playing field. But there's a lot of things I had to learn. What trial and error, right? Who to ask, what to do, what not to do. But a network like this would be very beneficial for someone who's fresh out of school looking to sort of who has that lived experience that have a network to navigate and people in other fields and other walks of life.
Thank you, Tony. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, same thing. It's just being able to expose yourself. I think exposure is the best experience of anything. That's why when we talked about tone and getting them out of the group homes into the colleges, I didn't care if a young person went off to college and didn't make it through the first semester. I wanted them out of the city and on a college campus to experience something different. And that in itself, exposing yourself to something that is not your normal creates, different visions. You know what I mean? When you just know
Mm-hmm.
one thing, that's what happens,
Right.
So exposure is beneficial.
Yeah. So you think the visibility that our communities are creating is really going to help elevate the future of work. And I agree. Hence why the Inclusion Initiative was born and dreamed and then actualized, because there was no visibility of the everyday successful person with lived experience. There was always the really traumatic bad stories, or the superhero level stories of the very few that get that opportunity to reach it to the very top like that. But everyone in between, there's no visibility. But we're all changing that, right, through the work that we're doing. So it's really great to have you both on. Michael and Tony, please stick around. But we're going to end the live broadcast now. Again, please check out Michael's book, The Ripple Effect, on Michael or at michaelartaberry.com, and Tony's book, Gus the Grateful Groundhog, and his company, fosteringminds.co. And we are the Inclusion Initiative. And we're so happy to have you join us. We're excited to have you with us next time for another great conversation. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.